Welcome back, everybody, to All Things Rangers this week. I'm your host, Mark Williams, and I am brought to you by a man coming from the top ropes right now, Mr. John Filkowski.
Oh, yeah, the Macho Man Randy Savage on All Things Rangers, brother. And let me, Tom Wilson, I'm about to come off the top rope on you, brother.
And a guy we can hear loud and clear right now from the Off the Post podcast, Mr. Anthony Loraco.
We're going to the playoffs, but we got beat by Doogie Howser.
Which also kind of reminds me, how do you sum up the New York Rangers season? I think there is a simple way of summing it all up. Just look for this classic piece of cinema called The Hunt for Red October. You know, that's still one of my favorite last lines a character has had in any movie ever. Who would ever want to say they'd want to see Montana? But you know what? It would have been nice. So how do you sum up this New York Rangers week, which ended their season? Well, how about let's start it off with a 4-0 loss to the New York Islanders when you really needed it. Well, don't worry. We actually have plenty of highlights for the Rangers in that game. And that was more action than what was really in Madison Square Garden that night. But no, that's okay, because they had to come back to the Nassau Coliseum to keep their faint playoff hopes alive after dropping the first game to the Islanders. And it happened all over again. Semyon Varlarmov, another shutout. Are you kidding me? Really? So there's that. Oh, and don't worry. We got more highlights from there. You got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. So, even though we seem to be down a man for the moment, we'll soldier on. Then the Capitals came to town, and we have a lot to talk about with that game. But we did see 2 goals by Mika Zibabanejad. He would have 22 on the season. A very pretty goal by Alexis Lafreniere and Kakko combining, with Kakko finishing it. And, like I said, there's a lot more. The Rangers took a 3-2 lead and would fall in that game as we got Anthony back. The Rangers take a 3-2 lead, fall that game 6-3, which I had to think about that for a minute, even though the score was right at the bottom of the screen. So, Philip, I got to start with you. What do you make of this week? I mean, how does it make you think about the season?
It's a microcosm of it. I've been saying that for how many weeks now? It's a microcosm. They don't show up to big games. This has happened for 3 years now under David Quinn's tenure. It's inexcusable. You need a veteran head coach. Someone I know.
Oh, hold on. Okay.
All right, so
Anthony, you're all good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go with what you're saying.
Yeah, so Stat Boy Steven is someone I actually talk to on a somewhat regular basis, and he and I were discussing this, and he's absolutely right about it. It's you can either have a veteran coach, or I'm sorry, a young coach with a veteran team, or a veteran team with a young coach and an experienced coach. You can't have both because there's no leadership. And this team lacks leadership, as we've seen throughout all season. I've been saying it all year. You can go back and go through any of our videos. I've been saying it all year. The team lacks leadership from top to bottom. And the front office has done a poor job of putting players who can help this team in leadership roles. I mean, not having Jacob Trouba doesn't help. Chris Kreider, even though he's been a ghost for the vast majority of the season when he really hasn't been on his hot streaks. Mika Zibabanejad started the season extremely slow. I mean, there's just no leadership up and down the lineup. The leadership group is soft. That's why they haven't picked a captain for the 3rd season in a row. So, I mean, it's just it's a microcosm of everything. And the coach isn't a leader of men. I don't know if he's lost the room or not. I really don't. There are times where they look like they play inspired hockey. There are times where they look like, there's some fight to them. And then there are just times where they just look like they do not care. And I mean, I know this is still a far cry from the country club mentality that the team had in the early 2000s, at the tail part of the dark ages, as we refer to them as Ranger fans.
Oh.
Yeah, those days. But
Brian Trottier days.
Ron Lowe,
Oh.
Brian Trottier, John Muckler. I mean, do we really? I mean, I know I don't have to go back down memory lane with you and a lot of the older Ranger fans who will be watching this, but this is not a good coach. The leadership group isn't strong enough to support a coach that really isn't a leader of men and really isn't experienced enough to be out coaching legends like Barry Trotz and so on, and Peter Laviolette, who the Rangers let slip through their hands a second time. I called for it back in 2014-15. They should have. I don't even care if Alain Vigneault took them to the Stanley Cup Finals the year before. Should have fired him and went right for Peter Laviolette, the guy that was a proven winner. But nope, they didn't want to do that. So they let Laviolette slip through their hands a second time. Now he's with Washington, and lo and behold, what happens? So yeah, we're looking at just a microcosm of this season. It's no shows against the Islanders. And let's give the Islanders credit. They played good hockey. They played their hockey. They got the lead. And I've been saying it for how long. The Islanders are a better team when they have the lead. Much better. If you get the lead on them, odds are you're going to beat them because they don't play well when they're behind. The stats show it. So, yeah. I mean, the Washington game is a whole nother story. It just shows you that this team does need toughness. And I'm not one of those old heads who says, oh, well, we should have Peter Worrells and Sandy McCarthy in our lineup every day. I'm not one of those types. Trust me, I'm not. But this team is going to need some sort of toughness and in good two-way forwards in their bottom six to be able to get to that next level and start winning and be a real legitimate playoff contender. So, and then there's the Wilson stuff, and I know we're going to talk more about that, so I'm not going to get too into that right now, but, yeah.
Right, like, because it's just, we're going to save that for a little bit more, but I gotta just jump in for a minute and just say, this season is exactly, it's not even a microcosm, it's exactly what we've been complaining about the entire time. It's questionable decisions made by a head coach that I don't even know how to categorize him anymore. We argued 2 weeks ago that you should start Georgiev over Shesterkin at the Coliseum. Shesterkin is your number one goalie. I said you ride with Shesterkin. Knowing you have 2 games, you've got to go at least one of those with Georgiev. Why not go with the first one? Instead, he goes with Shesterkin. Georgiev gets lit up at the Coliseum anyway, and that's all she wrote. Those games were about as competitive as long as the Kentucky Derby ran. Like, that's how long it took. Because once the Rangers were down 1-0, it was over. When the Rangers were at 2-0, they were screwed. So, it was nice to see Zibabanejad scoring some goals on Tuesday night. Nice to see the goal from Lafreniere and... Sorry, it's not the goal from Lafreniere, but it was Kakko's goal. Both of them made 2 great moves, so they need to both be credited on that. But this team need toughness. They need to change. They need to change right now. And I wouldn't even let Quinn twist in the wind. I would tell him right now, we're changing. They're not winning another game the rest of the year. If they do, who cares? What are you gonna do? So. Anthony, what do you got?
Well, the Rangers entered the week, they're 5 points behind the Islanders, 4 points behind Boston, and you would have thought they would have came out with some sort of fire, and that didn't happen. The Islanders were all over them from the beginning. It was a team that knew they needed to get some points and secure the playoff spot. And they played like the desperate team, and the Rangers were the desperate team, and it was the opposite. The Rangers didn't have any juice in the beginning. The Islanders got the lead, and then they suffocated them. As an Islander fan, I'll say, there are times during Ranger Islander games where I'm nervous and I don't know which way this game's going to go. Pretty much the start of both those games, the way the Islanders were playing, I never really had any doubt in my mind they were going to lose the game. They didn't let the Rangers do anything, and they had the energy. They came at them in waves, shift after shift. They were physical. The Rangers didn't have a response. So the Islanders got the job done. The Rangers didn't, and then I would say after the Rangers lost that first game to the Islanders, even though they weren't eliminated yet mathematically, let's face it, boys, that loss really ended their season. So I think the second game, they were just lifeless. It was like they checked out. And that was a very easy game for the Islanders to play in. It really was. It's sometimes it's tough for the players to play in games like that when they know that their season's over. But still, have pride. Come out in front of your fans and, the second game was at the Coliseum, but still come out and play hard. Play for your teammates, the guy next to you. Maybe a job next season. So kids, getting more valuable ice time. So you still have to play hard. And I put it on the veterans. I know I think we were going to talk about in bar talk. We go about the veterans are worth it, their price tags. But I saw the stat line during one of the games. Zibabanejad, Panarin, against the Islanders, they have disappeared this season. The production wasn't there. Strome, he add him into that. Against the Islanders, they didn't do much. So it's disappointing to see for your best players. The cliche is you need your best players to be your best players to win hockey games, and that wasn't the case for the Rangers. And then the game against the Washington, that was a game where they actually took the lead for a little bit. I was surprised. I was rooting for them. I'm like, wow, we're good if the Rangers can win this game. But then all that shitstorm happened with Wilson to kind of turn the tide. But listen, at this point, the Rangers should just play with pride. I know they're not making the playoffs, but still go out with your chin up high, and if you can kind of build some momentum going into next season, feeling good about yourselves, because you don't want to lose out in the season and have that stench with you all off season. It's at least. Again, it doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things, but it would be good for them to just kind of string together some wins here and close out the season, get feeling good about themselves when they clean out the lockers on locker clean-out day. But yeah, the Rangers have some decisions to make in the offseason. I think the main thing is Quinn. Me personally, I really don't think they're going to fire him. I don't. I think they're going to give him another year. I know that pains you guys and probably a lot of Ranger fans, but I think they're going to keep.
I would rather have Brian Trotz back.
I'll be shocked if they. Yeah, he's bad. Let's face it, he's bad. And that brings me to you needed that first game against the Islanders, so why not put Georgiev in goal that game? He was your best option to, get a win, start off on the right foot in this 2-game series, and they went with Shesterkin again. And for whatever reason, Shesterkin does not have good numbers against the Islanders. The Islanders get to him, and they score at will on him. Let's face it, they kind of do. So it's Georgiev should have played game 1. Because this way, if you start Georgiev game 1 and you win, okay?
All right, Phil, jump on in.
Yeah, I don't even know if Shesterkin really had it against the Islanders, if I recall correctly. Sorry to cut you off there, Anthony. I don't think he even has a win against them. And you're right. That decision is questionable. And I say the word microcosm, Mark, in terms of it's only one game as compared to a 56-game season, so it's still small, but you're absolutely right. There are so many different issues that you can look at within these 3 games that have been happening the whole season. The questionable decisions, the flat starts, the lifeless performances in big games like Anthony's talking about. Like, why were the Islanders the desperate team? That's unacceptable. Unacceptable. And it's unacceptable for a head coach to have his team come out like that when they're supposed to be the desperate team in these situations. It's unacceptable. And you know what? Listen, I get that Igor Shesterkin has to be the guy that has to beat the New York Islanders at that point. You got to go with your one. You've got to go with what got you to the dance. But at what point do you push that aside and say, hey, it's a regular season game. When we get to that bridge, we'll cross it if they play them in the playoffs. Why wasn't that the issue? Why didn't Quinn play the best player that gave him the best chance to win against the Islanders? And you know what? I've seen people say small sample size. Is 9 games really a small sample size when your goals against average was a 1.70 and your save percentage was a 9.44? Was that really a small sample size? Because I had people tell me that Cam Talbot had a better sample size against the New York Islanders in 2014, but why was that ever the case? I mean, he played less games against the Islanders that year than Georgiev has played in his career. So I don't understand why anyone would argue small sample size there. It's such a piss poor argument. And the worst part of it all is that, you know, if you question things about the veterans, it makes you wonder, like, do we really have the pieces in place to go forward? And you know what? I know the kids are going to be fine. The goal from Kakko from Lafreniere was great. And I know. I made the same face when I saw it. I was like, oh my God. But I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Why do I see more from Alexis and Lafreniere that speaks to leadership than from Mika Zibabanejad or Chris Kreider or Artemi Panarin? And you know what? And I'll give Panarin it. Panarin went in right after Wilson, sticking up for his friend. That was great. But there's not been enough instances where it looks like this team has come together. Last year, the Montreal comeback was what brought them back together as a group. They started playing better after that and Shesterkin's subsequent call-up. I haven't seen that this year. There was no moment this year where I can say, hey, you know what? This team might have come together. Nope.
And furthermore, like, they came out flat as I said all weekend. They were flatter than the ice they played on. And you're playing for your season. You're at home. You got your arch rival, must-win game. You got to do this. And you know what we got? We got a team that showed up for a combined 2 games that had maybe 5 scoring chances more than the 3 of us did. And it would be interesting because Anthony would be wearing an Islander jersey. So it's an absolute joke. It's an absolute joke what those final 2 games were. And the fact that the Rangers there needs to be a change. There needs to be a big seismic change. And I'm not just going to pin it on Chris Kreider. I'm not just going to pin it on a lot of guys. There needs to be a change. And it's got to be David Quinn. No. And you got to get tougher on your bottom 6. Can't have Brett Howden out there who's not going to help anything. I mean, at least if they had, let's say, Brendan Lemieux. Brendan Lemieux would go up and pick the fight with Tom Wilson. He'd lose, but he'd pick the fight. So
I don't like the whole deterrence argument because it's not necessarily true. Like, what stopped Dale Hunter from doing what he did to Pierre Turgeon, which happened, I believe, it was actually 28 years ago yesterday, I think that game was.
Wow, okay.
Anthony, I think, might know the answer to that one.
Well, it would be 1993, so that would be 28 years.
Yeah.
So, you got the day right, then, yeah.
Yeah, well, I know the years are right, but yeah, it was 93 getting in the playoffs. But,
Game 6.
Look at what happened with Matt Cook and Marc Savard. You know, Milan Lucic was actually on the ice for that play. It's not gonna stop these guys from doing this, deterrence or not. What needs to happen is you know what? I'm not even going to get into that because we're getting into that later.
Well, because we're going to get into that in about 2 more minutes. Anthony, last word on the Rangers season?
Peaks and valleys. They had a rough start. There's the drama with D'Angelo. You know, they looked disjointed. Panarin had to take that leave of absence. They came back. They looked good. But just overall inconsistent. You know, inconsistent team. You know, and listen, it's not going to get easier for them next season because Carolina is going to be back in the division, which they're a really good team. So even if they go back to the old, you know, I would say the old format, but the format that's been the norm before this year, with those 2 wild cards, you know, Florida's a good team now. I mean, maybe they regress, but how do they get in the playoffs next year either? I mean, listen, a lot can happen in the offseason. You never know, but they have a lot of changes to make, and, they're still a young team that are learning, so just kind of roll with the punches. But the main thing is you got to replace the coach. Or at least if you replace the coach, you're in the right path headed forward. You're going to have a guy that's going to know what he's doing behind there. And then from there, the rest can take care of itself. But, overall, if I were a Ranger fan, I guess I'm not that disappointed because I know a lot of people didn't really expect them to make the playoffs this year. But still, just they're inconsistent. Their inconsistency, that would be the part that would be bad thing to me. So we'll see what happens next season. But, again, it's they played in a tough division. They're a young team. There's really not much else you could have expected.
Well, we want to know what you think about the way the Rangers season went down. Are we overreacting, or are we totally right and you agree with us? I will give you a hint. We are right. We know we're right. So put it all in the comments below. And as far as some of the other things that we mentioned, stay tuned. We're about to talk about Tom Wilson right now and that incident that happened. Also, changes to the playoff format. That'll be in our editorials. That'll be in our editorial segments later, as well as talk about how, don't be fooled by the Rangers. They're not right there. You'll see about that in a minute. Did you like that video? Of course you did. So why not check out some more of our content? You can check the playlist right here or right here.
Your ideas are intriguing to me, and I wish to subscribe to your newsletter.